those just dissolved. There's nothing there. A lot of these companies that were profitless, other than Thoma Bravo buying Coupa, nothing there to really sell to buy the rest. And it came back to Microsoft, to Amazon, to Apple, to by the way, to Tesla, and Alphabet. And I don't think these stocks are right to sell because they've come down a lot, but I do think they are the source of funds. And when the selling is done in those, which might be after the Fed meeting, then you're going to start saying, well, listen, what did Wells say about Amazon? Because Wells presented a very positive article today about Amazon.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because we were looking at research from Strategas this morning, and they were looking at how some sectors have done since the dollar peaked in September 27th, and how since rates have peaked on October 24th. And if you would have asked me 6 months ago when all the stocks were falling because the dollar was strong and rates were rising, what would perform the best on the opposite would be tech. But that hasn't been the case. No. It's been materials. It's been copper.
It's just totally
while technology has lagged.
And then look at this. I mean, this is typical. Okay, so you come in, and this is just, once again, the endless pressure. Even though Coupa got a bid from Thoma Bravo.
Yeah, a lot of deals
Even
today.
though Amgen bought Horizon, which is something J&J passed on. Now, the Amgen people will try to convince me it's good. I was telling Jeff away. Remember, you're a member of the club, so you get to hear everything. When I go out with a CEO, they're always very persuasive. And if I were just to stay home, maybe watch some NFL and do my homework, I would actually have been better this year. Now, I'm not being facetious. I am going to talk about this. Homework in a vacuum is often better than homework with the help of the CEOs. And that's because the CEOs are not unlike head coaches who are rarely ever going to say, you know what, we're going to suffer a beat down this weekend. They just don't do it.
No, of course not.
All right, guys, let me just jump in here for a minute. As I said last week, I did talk about, as Jim could talk about meeting with CEOs. I say a CEO will always tell you what you want to hear. So the homework is very important, as you guys can hear. But I just want to talk briefly about companies like Nvidia, Microsoft, what other one? Tesla and Alphabet. As you know, these are strong companies, and these are companies that are down now, and it's a great opportunity to buy these companies. We've all been saying that these companies are strong companies. I always tell you to buy very strong companies that you know going to be around for a long time, guys. So you see that stocks are down. I think Alphabet is like $89. Amazon is around the same thing, and Tesla is like $100 and something. So consider adding this stock to your portfolio. Just remember, you're not going to see the changes now, but come on later on, you're going to see big changes. Maybe as we get into the new year, you're going to make some money. So consider buying these stocks, guys. Let me go back to Jim Cramer and Jeff Marks with the CNBC Investment Club morning meeting.
Meanwhile, Jim, we got a big week. CPI tomorrow, Fed meeting.
I think
oil's trying to make a little bit of a stand here after some tough weeks.
Bogus stand. We're going to have some more on that tomorrow. Although, I certainly feel we're much lower, too close to a bottom than to a top on oil. At the top, everybody loved it. At the bottom, everybody hates it. That is very typical because it's trend following. The CPI, I think the possibility that you got a couple of things in the CPI that are actually going to go the way of the Fed.
Well,
gasoline,
energy certainly has.
Gasoline, used cars, these can matter. We still don't have food. I mean, if you go over the quarter of Costco, you'll see there's still not the deflationary aspect of food yet.
Right, and that showed up in PPI too.
Right, but that will because wheat is down dramatically, in part because, despite what Jamie Dimon said, the Russians are flooding the world not just in oil but in wheat. He was talking about how fertilizers is in short supply. That was the view. It's changed. The facts changed. He has to change with it, I think. Treasury yields signaling okay.
Yeah, they were down a little earlier. I think they're around flat now. But again, it doesn't really seem like the day-to-day moves flat really has been impacting.
No, and it's entirely Fed.
Stocks.
So it's entirely Fed, CPI and Fed. Now, I do want to talk again about West Texas Intermediate. Now, if you have China come back online, all right, which I think they're going to.
Sure.
If you don't have additional pumping by the big American companies, which I like, if you do have to have a build of nat gas next year in Europe because Russia might cut them off, then I think that selling it here. Now, I think it hit 65 in part because this is all their trend followers, and this is where the move started. So they tend to be able to bottom where the move started. But you know what? Ultimately, this is where a whole group of analysts went positive, and this is where another whole group of analysts went positive. And for the most part, these are now going negative. And I find that yes, you can indeed say to yourself, wait a second. They loved it at X, they hated it Y. I'm a buyer at Y. I'm waiting for oil to bounce a little bit to be able to come to you and say, okay, we got to buy some of the Devon back that we sold.
Right.
Not yet.
Right. Or even the Halliburton back that we trimmed last Monday.
Yes.
And then it was, of course, it was named the JP Morgan a top pick at by their analysts, but that didn't matter later on this week.
Now, these are all knowers, man. We sold this much higher. This is at 210 is where he bought stock.
Yeah,
and we'll do that. I think
certainly.
We'll have to go over it because oil, of course, is lower.
Yeah.
Scott Sheffield. Coterra's premier nat gas, and nat gas is going up. But don't forget, we have a huge storm coming our way.
Call out Truist downgraded them today. So the long knives seem to be out for these nat gas.
Why didn't they downgrade them at 30 or 35? Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Yep.
And when I see that, like, look, it's entirely possible that you could say something has changed at Microsoft, or why would they have to pay for 4% position one to get the web business, which is what it read like. I mean, you can say something's changed there. You can easily say something's changed Apple, that there's been a slowdown because of what's happened in China, and also because I think there's a little fatigue in the group. But when you have a Coterra, nothing's changed. They're like producing a lot of good natural gas, a lot of good oil. The only thing that's happened is that the price of oil has come down and to a level where it might bounce.
Yep.
And if it might bounce, you don't want to sell it.
Well, what do you think of this one? So Qualcomm gets downgraded today at Wells Fargo. They go to.
All right, guys, let me just jump in here very quickly and talk about the oil stocks, guys. As you can see, Coterra, as we've been saying, that's a wonderful price at around the $24. Coterra has been selling for around $26, has went up in the 30s, like up to 32 to 35. I think it's a great stock. You also have Halliburton, which doesn't give a big dividend. So I'm not a big fan of Halliburton in terms of comparing to the other stock because of the dividend. But you also have Devon, and once Devon hit in the 50s, guys, I would say consider buying it. Things going to go up. And if it doesn't, you still have that dividends to cushion this. So the oil stock still look good, guys, and it might be an opportunity to get into some oil stock. And as I recap and told you, you still have the great companies. You still have companies like SEZ, which I like a lot, and Jim Cramer I like a lot, guys. So this was just the morning meeting, guys. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you tomorrow morning when I'll give you more info on a next club meeting.